Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at child support in Texas,
Right?
specifically how it's calculated using this thing called the percentage of income model.
Sounds fun.
Now, you might be thinking legal stuff sounds a bit dry,
Yeah.
but trust me, this stuff gets pretty fascinating and it can make a huge EGE difference, especially in Texas. We've got some legal summaries and articles here that we're going to be taking a look at.
Right.
We're going to pull out the most important bits for you.
Great.
Ready to decode this system with me?
Absolutely. Child support can be confusing.
Yeah,
A little knowledge goes a long way, particularly in Texas.
especially in Texas.
Their system tries to be as fair as possible and adaptable, but definitely has its complexities.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get into that percentage of income model,
Yeah.
what is the big idea behind child support in Texas?
Right.
Like, what are they aiming for with this whole system?
The focus is on the child's financial well-being. So Texas law aims to protect kids financially, ensuring their needs are met, regardless of the family structure post-divorce or separation.
Okay, so it's not about punishing one parent over the other.
No blame is not the focus here.
Got it.
It's about making sure that the child's well-being and financial stability
Right.
are taken care of after a divorce or separation.
Okay, got it. So how does this percentage of income model, or POI, actually work?
Right.
I'm guessing it's not as simple as just picking a number.
You're right. It's not random.
Yeah.
The POI is at the heart of Texas child support calculations. Instead of a fixed amount, child support is determined by a percentage of the non-custodial parent's income.
Okay, so if the non-custodial parent earns more, they contribute more to child support.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the benefits of this model is that it adjusts to income changes.
Oh,
So say you get a raise or a bonus, the child benefits from that,
right.
but it also protects you if there's a job loss or an income reduction.
Okay, that's good. That keeps things flexible.
Right.
So how is this percentage actually calculated?
Right.
Walk me through it.
We start with the non-custodial parent's gross monthly income.
Okay.
So that includes wages, bonuses, commissions.
So everything is included.
Yeah, you name it.
Okay,
Then a predetermined percentage is applied based on the number of children being supported.
got it.
For one child, it's 20% of their income.
Okay.
For two children, it's 25%, and so on.
Okay. That's pretty straightforward. So far, so good. But I have a feeling there's more to it, right?
You're right.
What about things like healthcare
Yeah.
and other expenses for the child?
You're right, there are nuances. Things like health insurance premiums for the child,
Okay.
childcare costs, and any unusual child-related expenses can all factor into the final amount.
Okay.
The court looks at the specifics of each case.
So it's not just plugging numbers into a formula.
Not always.
Okay.
The system tries to be flexible and fair to all parties involved.
Now, you mentioned Texas considers a broad range of income sources, not just wages. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure.
What else do they look at?
It's about getting a complete picture of the non-custodial parent's financial capacity to support their child.
Okay.
So Texas looks beyond just your regular paycheck. Bonuses, commissions from sales,
Okay.
self-employment income,
Wow.
even Social Security benefits or rental income.
So they really do consider
It's
everything
all considered.
to get that full financial picture.
Yeah, it's about making the calculations as accurate and as fair as possible, taking all sources of income into account.
So if someone's trying to hide income or underreport their earnings, they're likely to get caught.
It's highly likely, yes. The system is designed to uncover all income sources.
Yeah.
And remember, we talked about documentation earlier.
Yeah.
Good record keeping is crucial. If there's ever a dispute or a need to change the child support order, having detailed financial records is a game changer.
So it's not just about what's happening right now, it's about being prepared for the future too.
Exactly.
Now, I'm curious, are there situations where they might deviate from that standard percentage?
Absolutely.
Are there exceptions to the rule?
The POI is a guideline, but there are exceptions. For instance, if a child has significant medical expenses
Okay.
or requires special education, the court can adjust the support amount accordingly.
So it needs to adapt to individual situations.
Exactly.
What about changes in a parent's finances?
Sure.
Like a job loss or increased expenses?
Those situations can trigger a review of the child support order.
Okay.
The system is designed to be flexible.
So it's not something that you just set and forget.
Right.
It can be adjusted as needed down the line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And remember, good documentation is critical here.
Right.
If you're asking for a modification, having detailed records of your income, your expenses, and any relevant circumstances will make things much smoother.
Got it.
It shows the court why a change is needed.
So being organized is really important throughout this whole process.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about a situation that can get a bit complicated. What happens when the non-custodial parent has other children to support,
Okay.
maybe from a previous relationship? How does Texas handle that?
So that's a great question and a very common scenario. When multiple children are involved, calculations can get a bit trickier.
Okay.
Texas law aims to ensure that all children are financially supported.
So how do they balance that?
Yeah.
How do they make sure that all the kids are taken care of?
It's a balancing act, but the goal is always to ensure all children's financial needs are met.
Okay.
Texas law allows for adjustments to the calculation in these cases.
Okay.
If a non-custodial parent has other children to support, the percentage for the child in question might be lower. This ensures they can meet their obligations to all of their children.
That seems like a pretty fair approach.
It acknowledges the reality of blended families,
Mm-hmm.
and it aims to create a system where all children are financially protected.
Okay, so we've established that child support orders aren't set in stone.
Right.
They can be changed as situations evolve. Can you walk us through how someone would go about actually changing an existing order?
Sure.
What does that process look like?
If circumstances change significantly for either parent,
Right.
like a big income change, a job loss, or a major medical situation, you can petition the court for a modification
Okay.
to the existing child support order.
And this is where that meticulous record keeping we keep talking about
Right.
becomes super important.
Absolutely. You need evidence to support your request.
Hmm.
The court wants to see proof of the change in circumstances and how it affects both the child's needs and your ability to pay.
Right.
Detailed records of your income, your expenses, and any relevant event can really impact the outcome.
So it's not enough to just say your situation has changed.
Correct.
You have to back it up with proof.
Exactly. The court needs evidence to make fair and informed decisions.
All right, last but certainly not least, let's talk about enforcement.
Okay.
What happens if a parent simply doesn't pay the child support they're ordered to?
Texas is serious about child support enforcement.
Okay.
They have a number of tools to ensure parents comply with the court orders.
Oh, so there are actual consequences for not following the rules?
Yes, there are. Let's talk about some of the tools they use to enforce these payments. One common method is wage garnishment.
Okay.
If you consistently fail to pay, the court can order your employer to withhold a portion of your wages and send it directly to the Texas Child Support Disbursement Unit.
So they take the money right from the source.
Right.
That sounds pretty effective.
It is, in many
Yeah.
cases. It helps ensure those child support payments are made on time,
Right.
even if you're not making those payments voluntarily.
Are there other tools they use besides wage garnishment?
Yes.
What happens in more extreme cases?
In more extreme cases, they can place liens on property or even force the sale of assets to cover unpaid child support.
So the system has teeth. There are serious repercussions for not upholding that court order.
Absolutely. The goal is to ensure the child's needs are met,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a variety of tools to achieve that goal.
Okay.
Child support enforcement is a priority in Texas.
We've covered so much ground already, from the big picture goals of child support in Texas
We have
to the nitty-gritty of calculations, exceptions, modifications, and enforcement.
Right.
I'm feeling much more informed.
good.
What do you think? Ready for a quick recap before we move on to the next part of our deep dive?
Sounds good. Let's make sure we've hit those key points for our listeners.
Okay, to recap, child support in Texas is all about protecting those kids financially.
Yep.
They use the percentage of income model,
Yes.
which, as the name suggests, bases the amount of child support on a percentage of the non-custodial parent's income.
Correct.
That percentage changes depending on how many kids are being supported.
Right. And remember, Texas considers a lot more than just your regular wages when calculating that income.
Yeah.
Bonuses, commissions, self-employment income,
Yeah.
even things like Social Security and rental income are all fair game.
Wow.
They want a comprehensive view of your financial resources.
And we learned that the system is adaptable, which is great.
It is.
There are exceptions to that standard percentage if a child has high medical expenses or needs special education. Plus, you can request a modification to the order if your financial situation changes significantly.
Exactly.
But as you've emphasized, having all your documentation in order is essential in those situations.
Absolutely. Having those detailed records of your income, expenses, and any relevant events can really make or break your request to change the support order.
And finally, Texas has some serious enforcement tools to make sure people follow through on the court order.
Yes.
Wage garnishment property,
Right.
liens, even forced asset sales are all on the table if you're not compliant.
The Texas system is designed to ensure the child's financial well-being.
All right, I think we've covered the basics and have a good foundation. Now let's dive into some of those trickier aspects of child support calculations in Texas. You ready to explore that next layer?
Bring it on. I'm ready when you are.
Let's do it.
All right, so you ready to untangle some of the finer points of Texas child support?
I'm all ears. Those fascinating details that most people don't even know about.
Right.
That's what makes this deep dive so interesting. What have you got for me?
Let's revisit modifications to child support orders.
Okay.
As we discussed, life happens, situations change. So if you're seeking a modification, there's a specific legal process you need to follow.
Okay, so let's say your income changes significantly, maybe a big promotion or even a job loss. What's the first step?
You would need to file a petition with the court that initially issued the child support order.
Okay.
This is a formal legal process, not just a casual conversation.
Right.
And remember all that documentation we've been emphasizing?
Yes.
Absolutely essential here.
Right. You need strong evidence to justify changing that child support amount.
Exactly.
What kind of evidence are we talking about?
So you need to provide proof.
Pay stubs, tax returns, that sort of thing?
Exactly. You need to provide proof of the change in your circumstances, whether it's related to your income expenses or the child's needs.
Yeah.
Recent pay stubs, tax returns, documentation of a job loss or a new job, offer medical bills, evidence of increased child care costs, anything that supports your case.
So gather everything. That backs up your claim. The more evidence, the better.
The more, the better.
What happens after you file that petition with the court?
Both parents will have the opportunity to present their case to the court. This could involve presenting evidence, calling witnesses, and explaining why they believe the child support order should or should not be modified.
So it's like a mini trial,
Yeah,
focused specifically on the child support issue.
you could say that.
Yeah.
And the judge will carefully consider all the evidence and arguments from both sides before making a decision.
And what is the judge's top priority throughout this whole process? What are they really focusing on?
The best interests of the child, always. That's the guiding principle in all child support cases in Texas.
Okay.
The judge will be looking at how the proposed modification impacts the child's financial well-being and overall quality of life.
That makes sense. The child's needs should come first. Now, what if one parent is being uncooperative, like trying to hide income or refusing to provide necessary financial information?
Yeah.
Can the court force them to cooperate?
Absolutely. The court can issue orders compelling a parent to produce documentation, attend hearings, and participate in the process.
So ignoring the court is not a good strategy.
Not at all. In fact, it can have serious consequences.
Okay.
If a parent is found to be intentionally obstructing the process, the court can hold them in contempt, which could mean fines or even jail time.
Wow, that's serious. It's definitely better to cooperate
I agree.
and work within the system.
Now let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about imputed income.
Okay.
This could be another tricky aspect of Texas child support.
Imputed income. Have you ever heard of that term?
It rings a bell, but I can't quite recall what it means. Can you refresh my memory?
Imputed income comes into play when a parent is voluntarily unemployed or underemployed,
Okay.
meaning they're capable of earning more but choose not to.
Ah, I see. So if someone quits their high-paying job to become a barista, the court isn't just going to accept that they can only afford to pay child support based on their barista income, right? That's right. The court can look at their education work history and earning potential and impute a higher income for child support calculations.
So they're basically saying, we know you could be earning more.
Exactly.
So we're going to base the child support order on what you should be earning, not what you're currently bringing in.
Exactly. It's to prevent a parent from shirking their financial responsibility to their child by intentionally lowering their income.
That seems fair.
Right.
It wouldn't be right for the child to suffer financially because a parent is making lifestyle choices
Lifestyle choices.
that reduce their ability to provide support.
It's another way that the Texas child support system aims to protect the child's best interests.
Okay, so imputed income is one way they try to ensure fairness.
Uh-huh.
Are there other situations where they might adjust the calculation from that standard percentage?
Yes, there are. For instance, if one parent has a significantly higher income than the other, the court might order them to pay a larger percentage to ensure that the child can maintain a similar standard of living in both households.
So it's not just about covering the basic necessities.
Right.
It's about the child's overall quality of life.
Exactly. The goal is to create some sense of balance and
Hmm.
prevent the child from feeling like they're living in two drastically different worlds, depending on which parent they're with.
That's an important factor to consider. What about situations where a child has special needs that require additional financial resources? Does Texas take that into account?
Absolutely. If a child has substantial medical expenses, needs specialized therapies, or requires adaptive equipment, the court can increase the child support amount to cover those additional costs.
So the system is designed to be adaptable to many different situations. That's good to hear.
It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Every family is unique, and child support orders need to be tailored to the specific needs of the child and the circumstances of the parents.
This has been incredibly helpful. I feel like we're really starting to peel back the layers of this complex system and understand all the nuances.
That's what we're here for. Knowledge is power, especially when navigating the legal system.
Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to circle back to good record keeping.
Okay.
You've emphasized that point throughout our conversation. Can you explain why it's so important for our listeners one last time?
Sure. It's crucial to keep accurate and complete records of your income expenses and any other relevant circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Think pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements, medical bills, childcare receipts, any documentation related to your financial situation and the child's needs.
So don't throw anything away.
Right.
It might seem insignificant now,
Yeah.
but you never know when you might need it later.
You're right. Having too much documentation is better than not enough. You never know when you might need to request a modification, respond to a motion from the other parent, or provide evidence in court.
Great advice. Speaking of good advice, I think it's time to bring in a real expert.
Okay.
In our next segment, we'll be joined by a family law attorney who can answer your burning questions about child support in Texas. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to our deep dive into child support in Texas. We've covered so much ground already, from how those payments are calculated to the ins and outs of modifications and enforcement.
Yeah.
But let's be real, this
Yeah.
can be a tricky area to navigate.
Absolutely. It's a lot to take in, especially
Yeah.
when you're dealing with complex situations
Right.
or disagreements with the other parent.
Exactly. So to help us tackle some of those trickier aspects and answer your questions, we've got a special guest joining us today. We have a family law attorney who knows everything there is to know about child support in Texas. Welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here and shed some light on this important topic.
Okay, let's get right to it. Our listeners have sent in a ton of questions, so we're going to fire away and cover as much as we can.
Sounds good. I'm ready.
All right, first up, what are some of the most common misconceptions people have about child support in Texas? What do you find yourself explaining over and over again?
One of the biggest misconceptions is that child support is for the custodial parent. People often think it's like alimony, but it's not.
Right.
Child support is for the child, period.
Right.
It's intended to cover their needs and ensure their well-being, not the lifestyle of the parent they live with.
It's not about one parent winning or the other parent being punished. It's about what's best for the child.
Exactly. Another common misconception is that if the non-custodial parent has visitation with the child, they don't have to pay as much child support.
Oh, okay.
But visitation and child support are two completely separate issues.
Okay.
Visitation is about spending time with the child, while child support is about making sure they have the financial resources they need, regardless of where they're living.
So just because you see your kid on weekends, you still have a financial responsibility to support them.
That's right. The court will look at each parent's financial situation and determine what's fair and in the best interest of the child, regardless of how often you see them.
Okay, good to know. We've got a question here about back child support. What happens if someone gets behind on their payments? Can they just catch up later when things are better financially?
Unfortunately, it's not that easy. Child support arrears or past due payments don't just go away. They actually accrue interest and penalties, and you're still obligated to pay that full amount.
So those missed payments can come back to bite you even years down the line.
They definitely can. The Office of the Attorney General is serious about collecting back child support, and they have tools like wage garnishment, property liens, and even passport denial in some cases.
So it's really important to stay current on those payments. Now let's talk about modifying child support orders. Our listeners want to know, when is it appropriate to ask the court to make a change to the existing order?
As we've mentioned before, a significant change in circumstances can warrant a modification.
Okay.
Maybe there's a substantial increase or decrease in income for one of the parents, a job loss, a new medical condition for the child, or any other big life event that affects the financial needs of the child or the ability of a parent to pay.
And documentation is key. Our listeners should remember to gather any evidence they have to support their case.
Absolutely. The more evidence you can present, the stronger your case will be. Don't leave anything out.
Okay, last question. Do you have any advice for parents who are in the middle of a divorce or custody battle? What's the best way to handle those child support discussions?
My best advice, put the child's needs first.
Yeah.
It can be tough. But try to remember that this isn't about you and your ex. It's about making sure your child has the financial support they need to thrive.
I imagine that's easier said than done when emotions are running high.
For sure, it can be incredibly difficult. But if you can keep your focus on what's best for your child, it will make the whole process a lot less stressful. It's also crucial to be realistic about your financial situation and what you can truly afford.
And remember, it's okay to ask for help. Family law attorneys can guide you through this process and make sure your rights and your child's best interests are protected.
I second that. We've seen it all, and we can help you understand this complex system and reach a fair and reasonable agreement.
This has been incredibly helpful. Thank you so much for joining us and breaking it all down.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's it for our deep dive into child support in Texas. We've covered a lot of ground, but as we've seen, this area of the law is complex and full of nuances. Remember, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to protect your rights and ensure your child's well-being.
And don't underestimate the value of sound legal advice. If you're going through a child support issue, reach out to a qualified family law attorney for guidance.
Great advice. Thanks for tuning in to the deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.